some blogs here or there where I hear mention of, okay, let's mainly have the product owner and business analyst, business designer, actually design the API. Let's say you jump on Tracker Hub or let's say Postman, and you best build a collection, or you describe the API, you go through several iterations of that. Let them do that. They know the rules better than anyone, better than anyone else. I find it, and I'm guilty of that, the developer, I just want to code, I just want to get started. And of course, it changes. Some of them, step back a bit and say, okay, what are we really trying to do here? As opposed to, I know how to build this, I know what you're talking about, and go straight to code. So lately I've been focused trying to get these two kinds of groups of people to partake in the, in the collaboration design experience. And so that's why I've been looking at, on and off, looking at the APIOps cycles. Hopefully that will give me, give some of my colleagues the sort of a framework and help the API providers sort of narrow down the scope and figure out exactly what the heck are we trying to do here, what values the API going to have. So I'll just slide here a little bit. So I would have to say probably my favorite step here is the API in the canvas, right? The proposition canvas. I haven't played with sort of any sort of software that will maybe allow me to share this. The easiest thing to do is probably a whiteboard and get some stickies.
This looks a little bit like
yeah.
the maps that Simon Wadley talks about.
Yes.
Wadley
so,
maps.
Yeah, exactly. So here we have probably small fun here. Oh, maybe I can make it a little bigger. Let me see.
Control plus.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. Try that. So API products and services, pain reliever, gain enabling, benefits for using the API, problems using the API, and the features. So, a lot of times we're just, in conversations that I've been, we're just floating and keep talking and talking. There's no, sometimes there's no like rhyme or reason to what we're supposed to do. Sometimes, to make matters worse, we're not even sure what the consumer is. Not too bad, but I mean, it might seem obvious, but sometimes like, okay, if we don't know this, then obviously we're not gonna know this, right?
Is it okay to build an API without a consumer, or do we definitely need a consumer?
No, you definitely need a consumer, because that's basically API design should be consumer centric, and they have a problem. They have, that's a problem using the API. They have a problem, and your API will provide that value prop to solve that problem, and so on and so forth. So otherwise,
so simply saying that I'm going to provide an API so that they can have an interface into my systems and build some self-service stuff around it is not enough?
No, because you end up building, well, at least what I've seen, you end up building an API that has no value. It's well written, perhaps. It's got your pipeline, it's got all the techie stuff, but you built it and no one came. Or another corollary of that question, that point is, well, I have a lot of valuable data that I think is valuable. Let me make an API to make it available, and you might end up with the same problem. In the same situation. So
the problem of building the API without a consumer is it increases the actual value that actual problems that we see in software, where we are delivering at least 50% of features which nobody ever uses.
Exactly, and towards the end of the cycle, there's a portion of that I think talks about like MVP, but anyway, so maybe I thought, maybe using like I like using like draw.io, that's free, and you could save it to OneDrive, it's just an XML file. Maybe you could start drawing this canvas, and I'm sure there's probably some other sharing, real-time sharing software where people can actually. I think I've used one. I forgot.
I think I was at the DevOps days last year, and while they were explaining Wadley maps, one of the pivotal guys was using some software. I believe that software was from them. So,
Okay.
but I do not remember. I can check with my colleagues.
Yeah, and I've seen. I wish I remember. I've seen a package where you actually, it looks like stickies. Like you're clicking and you get a yellow box, and you can color them different ways to designate different purposes. But anyway, so here we are on this side, provider, consumer, and then there's a pool of a lot of stuff that, crazy ideas or. Anyway, so this would be, so for example, this kind of stuff, API consumer needs to achieve, right? Highlight the API consumer pains. And so now we're getting into some of the DX, and be ready to number 3. Continue the gain section of the customer reviews, describe concrete results, benefits, and so on and so forth. Say, I don't know, automation, say, one of the obvious ones, say, save some money, right? Time and money, and reducing pains, and of course, if you already have a list of APIs, then list the API products or services that your value proposition builds on. I think this was in particular important, this item number 4 here, because as your organization grows and you have different portfolios and they get more mature and they have more APIs, you start stacking that value and then see, okay, then you start seeing some real reuse. Not so much maybe linear, say consumer problem API, and then we're done here, and then this API is only used by this consumer, and that's very narrow. And then we have similar parallel situations, as opposed to, well, you have all these bunch of consumers and they're just pointing all over the place, building all kinds of things with all these APIs.
No, that would end up in a big mash that nobody can really handle.
Possibly. That's why the value prop is very, very important. That's what happens when you're building APIs for the sake of building APIs and so on and so forth. But
so in my opinion, it is always good to start building with one consumer in mind, and as more consumers come on board or more requirements come on board which require that kind of distribution, I think so we should refactor the code and reconsider if the API should exist as it does today, or do we need to split it, or add something to it so that it is more consumable to the next consumer.
Exactly. Maybe throw it out there, get some feedback, and then with that feedback come up with the next iteration of that API that's actually maybe adds definitely more value. This was just an experiment, but some might consider that costly. Say, hey, I need it now, or we don't have time for that sort of experimentation. So moving on. Then, this is also one of my favorites. Let me see if I make this a little